Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. All right. Today I'll be chatting with William Ray, YouTuber, coder, recent bootcamp graduate with a little bit of a shady past like me. And I want to talk to him about freelancing, the job market, time management as a parent, learning to code, and maybe a little bit about sobriety and his past as well. Welcome to the show, Will.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really excited to talk to you, man. I see you on YouTube. I didn't realize we had talked in the past. We're part of a tech content creator circle. And yeah, you have just really good videos and like a nice straightforward take on like the realities of coding, freelancing, just like practical advice, which I really appreciate.
Thank you. It's so weird hearing people say he's a YouTuber. Like it's still like a new thing to me. And I keep getting these compliments. I don't know how to take them sometimes. I'm like, all right.
It's weird. It's weird. Like the identities we just take on. Like I was way against being like a content creator at first. Cause I'm like, no, I write code for a living. I know that you write code for a living as well, and you've learned to do this new skill, and you're looking to get paid for it in a full-time capacity. But then we take on these other things like, oh, you're a creator, you're a YouTuber, whatever. But I think these are becoming more normal. It used to be like a pejorative to be like, oh, like this person's a content creator or an influencer. And I feel like it's becoming more normalized now. And I'm curious, we'll talk about this later, but I'm curious like how it may have helped you or maybe not help you in the job search. Because I've definitely, found some interesting insight into that in my own job search recently. I just came off the market and saw like how my online personality sometimes helped, sometimes didn't. So that was interesting. But before we get into all that, so what led you to pursue coding in the first place?
The dreaded question. So I have been in behavioral health, helping people with serious mental illness or substance abuse issues for years, right?
Okay.
That's been my go-to since I kind of turned my life around. And it's taxing on the soul, if I'm being honest,
imagine.
right? And when you see people passing away or you see people just coming in and out and it's hard. So I was looking for a way that I could make more money, still impact people's lives, but it not be life or death every day.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Because
for sure.
it's a lot. And every day it's life or death. And I want to still be impactful, but I don't want to be in that red tape of like life or death and like having to fight with the politics in healthcare of like you spent too much time with this client. And I'm like, he was going to go get high, man. Like I had to spend time with that guy. Like all that stuff is really difficult to deal with when your heart's into your job. So
I could imagine.
And I've always liked tech. So I've always liked tech. So it just seemed like I had the confidence, I guess I would say, to like pursue something else because I moved up in my career so highly and so quickly without no degree or anything like that. And it was just like, let's pursue something you really want to do. And I've always liked technology.
That's cool, man. And I was actually looking at your GitHub earlier too. And I was like, oh man, this dude knows like Java and Vue, which I was a little shocked. I was like, that's not the typical bootcamp tech stack. Any reason you chose Java and Vue, or is that just like went to a bootcamp, saw the local market, or just kind of by chance?
Right. So I researched boot camps heavily because boot camps are getting a bad name. And when I was joining, they had a real bad name. And Tech Elevator did not. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. A lot of them are shutting down. A lot of them are changing their name and all these different things. And Tech Elevator was one that it was difficult for me to find a bad review with.
That's awesome.
And I have like kind of a mentor guidance person that works at AWS through a Vets Who Code thing. And he kind of told me Java would be a good thing. And it just kind of aligned with that.
Yeah. It's one of those really boring languages that's in high demand, especially if you're in certain parts of the country. And it gives you a bit of a different, I guess, like outlook on like how to write code, because it's like a statically typed language. I mean, it's class based, I don't know any Java at all. I use C# a little bit, which is about the closest I ever got, and since then abandoned it. So you learned Java, and I'm just curious: are you looking to expand your skill set or learn other languages out there?
Yeah. So right now, I'm connected with two different projects for people that are still trying to learn, and I'm focused on React and TypeScript mostly.
Nice.
We're working with Node.js and stuff like that. Like I was saying, I'm more comfortable in the front end because I spent probably about a year before I went to the bootcamp actually studying front end development and have built some websites before I.
Very nice.
I think it's more of I'm just more comfortable there than anything, really.
Man, that's like when I think about people that are the most successful, like I own a coding boot camp too. We have an admissions challenge to get in. I think about my own trajectory. And I remember the reason I went to a coding boot camp, and I'm curious to ask you this too, like why you chose to after self-studying. But the reason I went to one after learning a lot on my own and even building and deploying some is because I felt like I was missing all the other little pieces. Like I was like, and this was back when there was not much online. Now I feel like it's actually harder to like try to dissect what do you really need to know versus like what's on YouTube. Or there's like so much free information. And I'm just curious, what led you after knowing how to compose a front end site? They say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to a coding boot camp now.
Well, first, I call what you're talking about trying to drink from a
Yeah,
fire
right.
hose, right? And that's how it feels. Is just everything's coming at you. So I kind of felt like the coding boot camp was going to be like that last push to get me over the
Hmm.
hill. And now that I'm looking back at it, it was a lot of confidence,
For sure.
right? And wanting that network and having that certificate. And I'm thinking that was going to be the last thing to push me over the hill to get my first full time
Hmm.
position. And that's a big reason I did it. And then I did okay in the stock market. And I said, if something had happened, I was like, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going full time and we're doing
Nice.
this. And everything
Hmm.
aligned, right? Everything aligned. And I jumped on it.
Tell me like your honest opinion on the job market now. Cause I'm like, as much as I own a boot camp and I realize the job market is weird. It's always been a little weird, but what's your experience right now, recent graduate on the coding market?
Oh man, it is brutal. I've never put so much work into getting a job,
Okay.
right? Like even in all industries, it's been so brutal, and I'm really starting to think that you have to have the skill. You got to be putting yourself out there, but I also think it involves a lot of luck
For sure.
of like the right person looked at your resume at the right time. Because I've watched a lot of people get jobs that and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or
Hmm.
prideful or anything, but like I know that I have a lot more experience than them, and they got jobs at the same place that I applied to. It's kind of weird, you know what I mean? So I think there is a lot of luck involved with
A
it,
hundred
and a
percent.
lot of like building your network, right?
Yeah.
But it's brutal, man. It's I'm in a bad time with that right now. So
I'm glad you kept it real, and that is for everybody that I say, oh, look at this success story, or look at this person. Those are the stories we hear about the most. We hear about either sides of the spectrum. I feel like the dude that got out and got like high paying 6-figure job at Google, and then the dude that has like a million applications and no one's looked at it yet. And we forget about there in the middle. There's a lot of people at different areas in this gray area there, and that sucks to hear. To be honest, I'm curious though. You have a YouTube channel. Has that helped at all as far as like attracting people that might want to hire you?
it has not
Okay.
yet. I have talked to another YouTuber that it has helped them. It has helped me build a community of other people and find other people that want to learn to continue my education. But it hasn't led to any jobs or anything at the moment. But it is growing pretty quickly, so we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe that'll be a small career or big career there. You never know. Um,
Right.
yes.
My sponsor bits are always like, I still need a job. Help me out.
If you're a hiring manager listening to this, by the way, I've checked out his GitHub. This guy knows how to code. You should consider reaching out to him. And we have your LinkedIn info in the show notes and in the newsletter if you're subscribed. But you have been getting paid a little bit of money to code, right? Like you have used this skill and actually made a little bit of money using it, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that because people are
I
always
call it
interested in the freelancing thing. I'm interested in that.
right. So I call that creating my own
Yeah.
opportunities. Right. And to be honest, I actually got the idea from my son. He is 14 and he's kind of building a landscaping business, cutting grass.
Smart.
And he started using the Nextdoor app.
Yep.
And I seen him like get a few clients, and it got me thinking of like, how can I sell my skill to small businesses, people that don't need nothing crazy, but everybody needs a website if you have a
Hmm.
business, right? And it led me down the path of like, let me reach out to some people, and I started doing some cold calling through Google Maps and the Nextdoor app, and it's not paying the bills,
Yeah.
but my car payment's paid, the utilities got paid. There's a few bills that are getting paid with
Dude,
it,
that's
which is,
awesome.
pretty cool. Pretty cool.
So that's so smart. That's like something I would not have thought of. So you did Nextdoor app and then cold calling, kind of like the old school approach. Like, hey, you need a website?
For sure. So most of my target audience is like the one man landscaper or the self-employed plumber or, the handyman that hires a guy on the weekend
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And I resonate with those people, right? Like I've been through that. So I talk their lingo, right? I can get them on the phone and I know how to cut it up with them and make them feel like, okay, this isn't a scam.
Yeah,
This guy's
for
real,
sure.
right? And that helps me lower that guard. And then I show them some AI data or some Google search, and I'm like, this is how it'll benefit you, man. You should let me do it. I'll do it for a couple $100. We can be done with it by the end of the
Dude,
day.
see, you get it. I meet so many people that want to talk tech, and I just was in a meeting of people talking nonstop tech jargon. I've done this before too. And people are just confused. Like, well, I don't care. I don't care if you build my website in Vue, Next.js, React, HTML, and CSS. I don't care. What I want is more money. You're smart. You're like, hey, here's how much traffic you could be getting that you're not getting. Let me help you make money through the website. You're not selling the website. You're selling like a business tool, like, exposure essentially. Very, very smart.
That's the key.
Dude, that's a good one.
That's the key. It's business solutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't care if I know how to do it, if I used React for their SBA, or they don't care about none of that. They just want to see a website with their picture. They want me to tell them that I put SEO in
Mm-hmm.
it because most people do know that. And if I say it, they're like,
Yeah,
okay, he
okay.
knows
I've
what
heard
he's
of
talking about.
that. I know what that is.
Right,
Yep.
right.
Oh, man.
Or if they don't know, I'll tell them something like, hey, it'll help you rank in Google
Mm-hmm.
search. I break it down to them so they understand, which also helps me understand it a little bit more too, right?
Oh, man. SEO, I've got schooled on that at my most recent job. I've been writing code for 10 years, which doesn't really feel like long. The more people I talk to, I'm like, 10 years seems like nothing now. But I didn't know anything about SEO till recently. I was at Clorox and building websites for these massive sites and understanding just how important SEO is to rank it all, but also how complex it is, But if you have even a basic understanding of it, that's super helpful. So, and now you've got the additional skill of knowing how to like talk tech to non-tech people, get a client's desires, and then translate that into code, which I think is probably as valuable, if not more valuable, than just learning how to code. It's a really great skill to have.
I keep hearing that. I haven't seen it to fruition, but I do keep hearing that. That's a skill a lot of developers don't have is being able to talk to people. And I guess I'm able to, but I am learning that it's really hard to take someone's
Mm-hmm.
vision from their head and like put that into code. Like that's a difficult thing to do sometimes. Is like try to see what they're seeing in their head.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's probably the most difficult thing, especially if you're not a designer either. That's my thing. I can't make a good looking site to save my life. I've Tailwind and just like stealing templates online has helped me out when the few contracts I've done over the years. But most of the contract work I did was like logic backend based stuff for guys that had some app they were trying to make, which I felt more comfortable doing. Honestly, I'm like, I don't want to be in charge of your design because I don't know. Don't come asking me what color it should be, dude. I have zero clue. It'll look like Craigslist.
I've actually lucked out in the few clients. I'm averaging about one client a week, but it takes a lot of effort just to get one. But I've been kind of lucking out. Most of them have business cards, and I just tell them, let's use the colors off the business card, and then I match it on Canva, and I don't even have to think about it. Right?
Oh, dude. And you have a video on this, by the way. Please check out this video. What's the video called so people can check it out?
How to make money with just HTML and CSS or something like that. How to make money with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's true. Like you totally can. I think people get this idea like no one's paying for that. I'm working at a company now actually where most of the developers use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and that's it. No React, no frameworks, no ES6.
That is wild.
Yeah, right.
Get me in there. I'll kill it. I'll kill it.
Somebody's going to snatch you up. I mean, they really need to. That's you got a hell of a lot of skills for a person. It's funny because I wouldn't consider you that junior either. If you know how to do that stuff, I'm like, okay, the coding is hard for sure, but knowing all these other things is harder and takes a lot longer. So I think you're going to do very well out there. Outside of coding, though, you said you help people in recovery, and I understand. We have some similarities, and I didn't realize this, but you wrote me on LinkedIn when I shared a little bit about my history of addiction. And then you reached out saying, hey, should I share this? I think I've told you, no, probably not, because it might not be the best for your image or maybe make people wary. But you did. And you said it's been really helpful to other people. Like people have reached out and said, hey, me too. I think that's important to share those kind of stories. But I'm just curious, like what got you involved with helping others? Was it because you have a history of addiction? You thought, hey, I want to give back to people now too. And how has sharing your story helped or hurt?
So that's exactly how it started, is that I lived a life that I didn't think I was ever going to get out of. And it took someone else getting in that hole with me and kind of sharing their stuff to pull me up out of
Mm-hmm.
it. So it means a lot to me. It's like part of my identity of helping others that are like incarcerated, or they want to change their lives, or they're on substance abuse or anything like that. Like it's literally a part of my identity, and my kids as well. Like they know, like we're going to functions, we're reaching out to
Okay.
people, like it's what we do. But I've sponsored a lot of people in 12-step programs. I've my past career was behavioral health, and like I literally went from like a glorified babysitter to a director of a multi-million-dollar
Whoa.
facility with just a GED and a prison number, right?
Wow.
And it came from my ability, or my, maybe not ability, but like my willingness to like be open about who I am. I'm not scared to share when like I'm going through something
Mm-hmm.
tough, how I got through it, like all that. Like I just try to be as open as I possibly can with people, and it's worked to my advantage for most of my career. Now with tech, I may have put my foot in my
I
mouth.
don't think so.
I don't know. That's yet to be seen. Yeah, I hope not. And ultimately, I helped a few people, right? Because I got a lot of DMs after I posted on LinkedIn, and like it was people that I know did not want me to mention
Mm-hmm.
it. They didn't like the post, they didn't
Yep.
interact, but they wrote,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that right there was kind of what it was about. And you gave me great advice, honestly. Like
Appreciate
you
that.
broke it down. It wasn't like you gave me a list of like reasons and when I should do it. Like you were very detailed in your response, and I fully agreed with it. But I don't know. One day I was just thinking like, man, somebody's got to hear this message,
I'm
right?
glad you did
Somebody
that.
does.
I respect you for doing that. I know that's not easy. But I also know, like we were talking before we started recording, that as humans, we have this need to feel belonging. And when you're transitioning careers, you can feel alone already. And if you feel like you have this additional burden on you, or this identity that doesn't quite fit in, you think, am I the only one doing this? Like, am I the only one that had this incident? Then you share it. And then I've had this experience too. It's what connected us at first. And now you're doing the same for other people. I think that's commendable. And just one of the highest forms of like giving back you can do, really, is to sometimes just share these unglamorous parts of your life. And you went to prison too. That's even crazier. So you addicted, go to prison. Did you get out of prison clean, or did you like have to figure that out afterwards?
Prison was my first taste of real freedom.
Wow.
And I tell everybody that when I was in prison was the first time in my life that I experienced like true freedom. I got back out and I continued on a bad path, but like I had that taste of what real freedom looked like peace of
Mm,
mind, not chasing drugs, just being content with myself. And it's so weird that that's where I found it, was in prison,
yeah.
right? Locked up for a year and a half for, something stupid. It was
Foolishness.
so stupid too. Right, right. But back to the other thing, man, because that's why it meant so much to me. So like I've heard your name early on in my development journey. And if you wouldn't have shared your story with somebody else, would I have stayed?
Wow.
Right. Like if I wouldn't have heard a hope story or somebody that like did it, because all I need to hear, I need to see
It's
some
possible, right?
evidence,
Yeah.
right? And you were evidence for me in the
Wow.
beginning, and it came from you being willing to share your story. So
That
it's my way of giving back, just like you gave back and helped me before we ever even had a conversation. I didn't even know what you looked like. I never talked to you, but I knew your story a little bit,
that's like
right?
mind blowing to me. It's like I don't have hairs, but the hair that I would feel on my head is standing up. I mean, that's an amazing compliment. It's cool because I was really freaked out saying that story. I've gotten more used to it now, and also I'm in a very lucky position. You honestly, it takes a lot more courage, I think, because I got 10 years in now. I'm like, I can say that's so far behind me that it's I'm already established in this thing. I waited for a very long time to say it, and I regret that actually. I don't think it would have mattered. I think people are on LinkedIn way less than we think, and I also think that everybody has a bit of a history, a bit of a past. Here's a weird thing I've been thinking.
Yeah, but
Yeah, go ahead.
the times are changing also too,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not as much of a stigma as it was 5 years ago
Yeah.
or 8 years ago. So like society is becoming more acceptable with people that have like turned their lives
Mm-hmm.
around, because it wasn't so common before, but it's becoming more and more common. I know some very, very successful, high level people
Mm-hmm.
that have some serious
Oh,
backstories,
for
right? Worse
sure.
than mine. I'm like, whoo, whoo, bro.
And
Okay,
they'll never share
okay.
it. That's the funny thing. I've noticed that too. Like I had a CTO reach out and he told me wild story. And actually the CTO of my former company won't out him, but he's the one that basically told me, he said, you got to share that story. Because me and him opened up and he told me about his life a bit. I told him some of mine. He's like, dude, why aren't you sharing that? And I said, well, who's gonna resonate with that in the tech world? And he really kind of forced me to do it, honestly. He really pressured me to do it. And I'm so glad he did. But you're right. There's more of us out there than people think.
For sure, for sure.
Hey, I've thought about this a lot. I have a bit of a criminal past too. I sold stuff for money for a period of my life. I was okay at it. I was fairly successful, and I do see some parallels between like criminal endeavor and software. I'm actually writing an article about it, and I think there's a few things that I see. People have this idea in their mind that like, oh, if you're a criminal, that's easy money. But I'm like, no, there's people that do that and they suck at that, and it's not like a get rich quick scheme. Like you have to actually hustle in order to get money, even as a criminal.
Hmm.
And I see that same kind of grit you can take and apply to software or any career endeavor. And you kind of learn that same lesson over again. And I see that with you. You're out there calling people up, doing like old school tactics to be like, I'm going to get somebody to pay me for this skill. And yeah. Do you ever see like parallels or things that
Oh,
have helped you from like,
for
yeah, right?
sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think about this all the time because I was fairly successful,
Okay.
right, in my past life. And when I look at other people building businesses, building brands, and doing all this stuff, I'm like, I've been doing that since a kid, right? Like I know how to build a business. I know
Right.
how to manage money. I know how to handle
Mm-hmm.
logistics. Like there's a lot that goes into it. And it's like, you can't really say it in
No,
public,
yeah, right.
right? But I'm always like, I have some business sense, right? And I've had it from a young age, if you will, right?
Yes.
And from what you just said, I'm sure you do too, right? And
Yeah.
it's a business, regardless of what it is, whether it's legal or not. It's a business, and you learn a lot from it,
And
right?
there's a lot of people that suck at it. I mean, I have stories of guys like here, take this, come back 2 months later. I'm like, what you been doing? I still got it. You still, what have you been doing for 2 months? What are you doing? I was in Oakland, California, high traffic area. Just like it. I feel like you'd be a fool not to be able to make money. And I'd beat so many guys that couldn't barely pay their rent. They had nothing. And I'm like, this is crazy. Same thing in the game of software. For everybody making six figures or driving around in Teslas, because software people don't drive Ferraris. There's some devs that are barely scraping by too. So it's like the Pareto principle: the 80% or the top 20% take over the other 80% of resources. Have you thought about this too? Like, do you think having a history of addiction, have you seen how that's translated into learning to code? And do you ever feel like that same part of your brain gets activated in your coding journey?
Oh, for sure. So just the act of overcoming, and I don't want to say overcoming, maybe that's not a good word, but like getting through that battle of
Mm-hmm.
addiction, because I'm subject to it still. I mean, we all are, and honestly, most people are addicts, but
Yeah,
it's legal stuff or something else.
for
You know what I
sure.
mean? But with that being said, of course, because I had to go through a lot of hard stuff, and I did a lot of fighting to get where I am in my life right now. Right, like I got custody back of two of my kids. I
Very nice.
got a house, got a job, held it down. Like I have a decent car, like all these different things. And it's like it came from that grit and
Mm-hmm.
determination of like, I really like when people say like you can't do this or don't do that, because I got this thing in the back of my head that's like,
Oh yeah, let me show
okay,
you.
I'm gonna go
Yep,
harder.
I feel you.
I'm gonna go even harder. Somebody was giving me crap for sharing too much on LinkedIn, and I was so glad he did it though, because I'm like, I finally somebody hated on me. I need that like
Yeah.
motivation, that fire, just to show you. So
Mm-hmm.
a couple years from now, I'm like, it worked, right? It
I
worked.
like that. I'm glad you said that because I feel like sometimes everybody's like, I want to have positive motivation. I'll be honest, some of my motivation is not positive. Sometimes I want to prove to people or my old self or
Mm.
family or whoever that, yeah, I could do it. Like, oh, you didn't think I could do it? Here it is.
In spite of,
Yeah. Spite is a
right,
powerful
right.
motivator. People got to use that more. People try to look for too much positivity. I'm like, let's be real. Sometimes you just want to spite somebody in your life. And that's okay, I think, to keep you on
That's
this
right.
path. If that's what's going to take you to the next level, I think that's completely valid to do. Back to coding stuff. What would you tell yourself 1 year ago, maybe before starting a coding bootcamp, that you wish you had known back then?
You already know enough. Don't waste your money. Don't quit your 6-figure job,
Oh
right? Like you
no.
know enough right now to go do freelancing, just start networking because honestly, like I was ahead of the class in my whole boot camp because I had studied for a long time. Like I
Okay.
did a full stack course on Udemy. And I'm not saying like I'm a great, like I'm horrible on the back end, but like I've seen a lot of code. I've worked on a lot of
Yeah.
code. And the boot camp didn't teach me a lot, but it gave me a lot of connections and it gave me a little more confidence. But honestly, like even with my freelancing, like I already knew how to do that stuff before I started the boot camp. And I actually had sold 2 websites before I went to the boot camp,
Oh wow.
but they were like a friend, and then the other one was a friend of a friend, and it wasn't like something I was
Hmm.
pursuing, but it did happen, right? Like I did do it with the skills I had before that.
And I think that's a great take, honestly. Like I'm very apprehensive. I mean, I own a coding boot camp, obviously, so I need customers. I want customers. I'm also a full time software engineer and engineering manager, and I get that everybody's timeline will be different. So when I hear people saying I'm going to quit my job and go full time, I'm always like, really think about that because as much as I want to guarantee you that this can happen, and I even am experimenting with a guarantee right now, 6 months, saying, hey, if you do exactly this in 6 months, I feel confident that you'll get there. But I mean, that's as confident as I can be. There's life is weird. The market is weird. There's just things outside of our control that factor into this thing.
And you can't really gauge how much work that person's going to put in. So I've seen a lot of people do a
Yeah,
boot camp and then do nothing
that's
else
the thing.
and then complain they don't have a
Yeah,
job. And I'm like, what are you doing? Are you even trying?
yeah.
Like I'm putting my, like every day of my life is focused on either learning how to code or applying to job. Like that's it. I'm here at this desk for like 13 hours a day. I'll run a cook dinner for the kids and I'm back at it. Right. And that's all I do. And then I see other people and I'm like, how are you complaining? Like you got to put the work in. Like
Yeah,
you can't just get the skill. Like there's more to it. And I feel for you, man, because doing a boot camp, like I've just seen it too many times, man. Like I shared my whole boot
hmm
camp journey through YouTube too. Like every week I did an
I saw
update,
that. Yeah,
and I've just seen so many people not do anything else. And there's more to it than just doing the boot camp, right?
100%. Yeah, yeah. But I say this, like I'm super confident knowing you, talking to you. I guarantee you're going to be hired. I've never seen a person, and I'm trying to really think if I can really say this truthfully. If I've ever seen a person that had a decent technical foundation, kept going, like just didn't stop, applying, recalibrating, seeing what did work, and just didn't get hired. And I'm thinking, even the people I thought this person will never get hired. There's a few times people prove me way wrong, and I'm glad they did because I'm like, damn, it's kind of crazy. This dude or woman just didn't stop. I got to plug this guy. If you're looking for a software developer, you really need to check out Will here, and his information's in the show notes. Last question before we take off. You're doing all this stuff. This is impressive. I mean, I'm hearing it. I feel like I have a lot on my plate, but you have more objectively. How do you manage time? Do you have like a strategy, something you do to manage all this time? Parent, YouTuber, learning to code, helping others.
Yeah. So I try to block my time out. Like Tuesdays is usually for YouTube, and that usually takes a whole day. Like Wednesdays is applying. Like I try to block out days for like my main
Hmm.
focus, and then like I'll do stuff on the side. But I also block out time for like sitting on that couch and watching YouTube for an hour and not doing nothing,
Yeah.
right? Because I think that's just as important. But
Oh, yeah.
but honestly, just making use of my time, like breaking it down. Like I need to be applying. I need to be being visible, like on LinkedIn, social media, YouTube, all these different things. So I just try to break it down, and I think it's just kind of came from I've been doing this for a while now. Like
Hmm.
getting into software development has been a 2-year journey almost at this point, and I fine tuned it, I guess, if you will, my schedule, anyways.
Yeah. That's impressive. You're going to crack it for sure. Like I feel just confident saying that. And then the cool thing is
Thank
oh
you.
yeah, no doubt on my end. I've seen this. I've talked to too many people to see that like you have all the traits of a person that's going to do well in this career. But now the cooler part is once you do crack it, you're going to have potentially another business on the side, and then you can do these things in parallel. That is, I think, the best move. If you can get into software, get a 9 to 5, have your own thing on the side, and then you just kind of can save your money and do other stuff, and then achieve. People talk about financial freedom or whatever, but it's nice to have two sources of income and be able to have that set up the foundation for that when you're already in the job. So very cool. I'm looking forward to seeing how your story
That
plays out.
financial freedom's what started this whole journey to begin with, right? Like the YouTube's making money, the freelance is making money. Now I need the stable money to pay the bills,
Yeah.
take care of the kids, everything else I can grow on top of the job. But I like how you said that, because that's exactly the plan right there.
Oh yeah, I can already see it going on. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your story. It's super inspiring and just really cool to hear and see somebody else out there in the middle of it, going through it. And I can't wait to hear like your success story in this latest endeavor, getting your first 9-to-5 job. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out varsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.